You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf help guide to all things Slavic. Maybe we should have a script. I feel like we're in this lead-in.
Yeah, this one's I'm Phil. We just do our normal intro-ish. And ad-lib it from there.
Do you remember our normal intro from memory?
Yeah, well, I know my name. That's as far as I gotta get.
All right, well, why don't you give it to me? Because I don't know it.
You don't know our intro?
No, I don't know your name. I need you to give it to me.
Oh my goodness.
Who are you? Who am I talking to?
You are talking to Mac Gerasimovich. And do you know what he does?
I think he studies Russian or Slavic literature or maybe movies, something like that. I feel like I've heard of him before.
Yeah, you probably have. He's extremely famous. And he also co-hosts this podcast, which is also very well known.
Incredibly famous, and it's pretty shocking that I don't have a better knowledge, but...
Have you gotten asked for autographs yet?
Oh, all the time. Not related to the podcast, for the other thing.
Right, the crime.
Yeah, well, the court says I can't talk about it until the case is over, but...
it's probably not good for you to be signing your name on documents.
No, well, mostly it's people trying to deliver... It's mostly couriers trying to deliver subpoenas to me, actually.
Right. Right. Not for the crime you committed, but because they want you as maybe an expert witness.
It's hard to tell. I'm not certain if I'm on the stand because I'm the defendant or because I'm testifying. It's really unclear, but
yeah. Well, that one case was crazy. That guy who killed his landlord with the axe.
Yeah. And her sister too. I mean, that was excessive, really.
It was, but honestly, kind of boring.
And maybe it was tough to get through the whole case. I mean,
I was just wondering if it ever got more interesting.
I don't know. I don't think it ever did. I think it didn't lead to anything. It didn't lead to anything of note. Nothing of value.
Yeah. Which brings us to perhaps a great question asked in our broader community.
What is that question?
Does Crime and Punishment get more interesting?
Yes. We're kicking off today. This office hours, you're entering the Dostoevsky zone. And today
that's
we
what
have
you get for coming late to office hours.
I know. You started in the middle of our whole thing. We had a whole bit going, and you just dropped in, and you missed you missed the good part.
It was really funny.
Yeah, before the recording started.
Mm-hmm.
Today we got a couple things to cover for you. Later on, we'll be talking about some Slavic literature books that we would love to cover, but for one reason or another, have not yet brought onto the podcast or probably will not bring onto the podcast. But first, before we got to that, we thought last time we did an office hours, or maybe it was the time before that, someone recommended us Dostoevsky Instagram. And today we went on there, and frankly, most of it was pretty normal. It was quotes. It was people making, honestly, some pretty funny memes. Not bad. So you guys get a pass this week. However, Reddit, I went into r/Dostoevsky, I went into r/Reddit, r/Tolstoy, and r/Russian literature, and sorted by controversial, and we found some interesting thoughts people have had, such as Matt says.
You sort by controversial. I just scroll through whatever's new, and within like the first 5 results, I find just absolute bait that I think is directed only at me.
Look, I want to be on the side of the people, and if r/Dostoevsky thinks this is controversial, then maybe it's worth discussion. Unfortunately, you were right. Actually, the controversial section was on the whole a little bit less unhinged than the top rated posts, but I don't know what that says.
Oh, I don't go by top rated. I just go. I'm just going new. That's it.
Just going new. Oh, you're a true user. You are the site. You are the people that you are the one that people post for.
Yes. I'm the only one reading most of these posts, I think. Yeah,
probably.
So there was a question that we should probably address. Does Crime and Punishment get more interesting? I bought the Peviar and Volhansky translation the other day and started reading it last night. However, I have found myself to be very bored. After finishing Chapter 3 in Part 1, the book is quite confusing. Whether the book is following Raskolnikov, I'm completely invested in his character and what he's thinking. Oh, sorry, whenever the book is following Raskolnikov. See, I can't read. I shouldn't be judging this. Although this is very much true, most of the book so far is just long-winded monologues, which are very dull to me. Chapter 2 was Marmeladov and now a letter to Raskolnikov in the 3rd chapter. There seems to be minimal dialogue and nothing is really happening. Many consider this to be the greatest achievement in literature, but I've seen nearly nothing which would make me think that. Burn. I don't want to feel this way. I hear everyone else endlessly singing its praises, and I really want to understand it. But if this is the rest of the book, I'm not very confident, assuming it's just little bits of plot smothered by 6-page long speeches.
I think this is a good question, actually, on two fronts. One, specifically on Crime and Punishment, and I think more talking about Russian literature in general, because it can be quite long-winded in a similar way to Dostoevsky. But also, secondarily, I think this is a worthwhile question, actually, just in general, when you're approaching a book on that you don't want to read that much after you've started.
Yeah, I always go to Reddit and ask if it gets better. This was my post.
Yeah, well, we're here to answer your post, hopefully, today.
Yeah, please.
And help you get through Crime and Punishment. But
does it get more interesting?
Do you think Crime and Punishment gets more interesting? With Dostoevsky, I think, maybe it's worth addressing Dostoevsky in particular first.
Boring.
Boring. Maybe I shouldn't have asked you about that. This is a bad. I feel like this is a rigged question. But I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to just tell anyone being like, all right, if you think it's boring, it's actually interesting, and you're wrong for thinking that, because that's not the case. I think if you were reading a book and you're not hooked on it, especially Dostoevsky, because Dostoevsky can be kind of rough, that's a fair question to ask. And I feel like our general advice has always been kind of the same on this front, which is that if you're not enjoying a book, you should probably put it down. Like, don't force yourself to read it. Burn it,
and advocate that everybody else burns it too.
But like Dostoevsky specifically, if you are like, there's a lot in those monologues, like with Marmeladov and that letter, there's a lot to be found. And if you're not finding those things interesting, if you're not finding these long-winded conversations between Raskolnikov and Razumikhin like interesting, if you're not gripped by that, then I feel like you're not getting the point of the novel. And probably the reason why you're reading Dostoevsky, the reason why almost everyone reads Dostoevsky is because they heard that Dostoevsky is smart and has big ideas and has a lot to say about psychology, and they would like to get a piece of that. If you're reading all these conversations and you're not getting any of that, if you're not getting any inkling of that, I feel like you're not really getting the book, and it's okay to put it down. Maybe it's a better book for another time. Maybe it's a better book to read after you do some short stories. Not every book is for everyone. If you're not if you're not rolling with it, then I don't see any reason for you to keep up with it.
Okay. I also think a lot of these books come with a foreword or an introduction that explains the book. They're hit or miss generally, but if you do happen to have one, particularly one that's, if you have a more academic edition, they tend to have pretty solid ones as well. Even though it's going to spoil the story of it for you, I would probably still read it first. That's just my opinion. It's not really spoiling when the book is this old, but especially for Crime and Punishment, it's not really about the plot itself. It's more about everything around the plot, and that's what a lot of these books tend to be. And so if you're reading it thinking this is boring because nothing happens, then actually, no, it doesn't get more interesting in that case, because there is less plot going forward and more monologuing. But in a different way, that is kind of where the interest is drawn from. So it may behoove you read through that intro or find a copy that does have one. That can be helpful sometimes. I know people don't like... I know it's probably more common to not know anything about the book before going into it, other than people think this is a good book, I'm going to read it. But in this case, if you're not familiar with Dostoevsky, you might want to have a little anchor going in. Or just read it and be miserable. I don't know.
That'd be in true Dostoevskian spirit, really.
Yeah.
I actually saw the same question in a number of other subreddits for everything, basically, for anything Tolstoy wrote, for a number of other Russian literature novels. And that's why I think it's worthwhile asking this question in general. And I think it's difficult. It's different when you're addressing Slavic literature in particular, because I feel like most people, when they are reading Slavic literature, this is not true for everyone, but most people are reading older novels, especially Golden Age stuff, when they're like, all right, there's the big ideas here. You're getting some people who are like, I'm just in it to read Metro 2042. I just really like this action novel that was written 15 years ago. Some people, for sure. Not everyone. Not most people, probably. So most people are probably approaching this with the idea that they're going to learn something here. And to your point here that that you might be afraid of like not getting these plot points early, spoiling the book for yourself. If you're approaching a novel with the intent that I have something to learn here, then you should be setting the groundwork for yourself. And you should understand that it's not about the plot points, but how you get to those plot points. It doesn't matter where Pierre ends up in War and Peace, right? We all know where he ends up. If you don't have that in the context of what he does on the way there, then that doesn't mean anything. And so it doesn't mean anything if you go into the book knowing what happens to Pierre at the end of War and Peace. And this is true for basically everything else that you're reading because you think there's an idea in there. You should always go in with like some background. And because if you go in there and you only have your own self and this author, the author is going to bowl you over because you don't have the context for understanding what they're writing about. You don't have the context of their era. You don't have the context of their political strife, the context of what other people they're writing in response to, if indeed that is the case for this particular piece. You are going to be overwhelmed by it, and you're not going to get as much out of it as you clearly could. So I think you're just going to have to get over that tendency to want to not know what's going on, because it doesn't matter what happens to these individual characters as much as what happens along the way, which is the long way of saying it doesn't matter. The destination, the trip is the important part, I guess.
Life's a journey, some people say.
Life is a highway, others might. And perhaps we should all ride it all night long.
Well, we should. I mean, as this person mentioned, they're only in chapter 3, so I think also give it a little time. It takes me a while to get into the kind of perspective of the author, from which I can then start to understand and enjoy it in a kind of different way. Or just put it down and come back to it. Maybe it's not the right time.
Yeah, I feel like outside of reading because you are thinking you want to learn something here, if you really just are reading for fun and you're not enjoying it, well, why force yourself just because it's something that people say you should read because it's smart?
The last people you should listen to about what you should read are people on Reddit.
Yeah. I don't know. This is just my personal experience too, but just in talking to people, if you start a conversation because you read something you think is smart, people have a very different reaction to that than if you start a conversation over something which is maybe less prestigious, but you find genuinely interesting. I feel like more often than not, people really can gauge that pretty easily. So if you're looking to read something for a dinner party because you want to be smart, I feel like in almost every case you will be better served by a less prestigious piece
Animal
that you
Farm.
have
1984.
No, but like, yeah, something less like something that people haven't heard of, but you're really interested in. People can feel a genuine excitement, and I feel like I do well at dinner parties, and that's just because I think similar to you, I just get really excited about super weird things, and everybody who walks in is like, "Wow, look at this freak! I've never heard of this, but he seems to be really interested in it. So let's get in this conversation." Versus the same conversation that everyone's ever been having about the same 5 books that they've been reading since high school. That you have a better take on than everyone else because you know it. You know you've got a better perspective. All these things.
Yeah. Well, but if you are going to monologue at a dinner party about a book that you've read, perhaps it might behoove you to maybe apply it to a more modern context. I feel like everybody knows about Crime and Punishment, and everyone respects it as a great book to read and an important book and all this stuff, but there are a lot of questions about Dostoevsky that we might take from his work that we can, think about in our own modern context, which is always good to do with literature, is to take it out of its original context and just kind of slap it on whenever you want. So with that, we have another question. What did Dostoevsky think about hookups and people who engage in it? Title, there's 3 T's in there somehow, plus his impact on us. No question, just statement. No upvotes, 9 comments.
That was that was one of the ones where like, I'm pretty certain this is bait, but everyone in the comments took it pretty seriously.
Also, I'd like to point out the fact that Cameron's phone, when he sent the screenshots, on 15%, and it's the morning.
I like to wake up with no charge overnight just to see how this day is going to go.
Yeah, that's it's fun.
Yeah,
we deduced what from this, Cameron?
We've deduced this may be bait, but if you're in the Dostoevsky subreddit, you win for it like a rat for cheese. Because there were some responses, and this is I feel like there's a larger thing here, which is with this is true for Dostoevsky. This is true for any other known Russian author outside of like the Slavic world. People love to be like, what? Going back to like our Josh Delaney episode a couple office hours back, like what do these authors have to teach us about our own times?
Nothing.
Nothing. They're not writing for us. They weren't thinking about you. Dostoevsky, what would you think about this idea of hookup culture? Which, first of all, I don't think hookup culture is a phrase used by anyone under the age of like 35. This is a Jordan Peterson type. I don't think Jordan Peterson's ever used this phrase either, but like a Jordan Peterson type, a lesser Jordan Peterson, if you will, who's like vaguely in connection with like the red pill, sort of communities online. He wouldn't have liked it. That's what it is. He wouldn't have liked that people are going around and hooking up with each other. There you go.
But you know what else he also hated? Jews.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Is he really the one that you should be taking your, all your moral stances from? Probably
Right.
not.
Like I think this question's a joke, but people take it seriously. So I think it's worth maybe addressing it seriously. Exactly. You don't need to take all
Absolutely
your views from old authors.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I refuse. I only wish if my undergrads really like ever talked in class or discussion, I so wish that I had somebody who would just ask these like freaking wild questions. I would get so much entertainment out of this. I had to have so much respect for an undergrad who came in and was like, I saw Jordan Peterson said Dostoevsky doesn't like hookups. What do you think about that? I would laugh so hard I would probably end the class early. All you undergrads out there.
You want to get out of it early, here's a hack. Yeah, but I mean, like, I think in terms of morals, I think Tolstoy has more to say about like how should we live our lives in a more meaningful way than Dostoevsky. But does that mean you should listen to Tolstoy and everything? Absolutely not. That man was a fucking freak. That isn't, you don't have to immediately accept everything because someone's smarter than you. That's a hack for life, is that a lot of people who are smarter than you are worse at a lot of features of life, frankly.
Also, Tolstoy is much more instructive with his novels. The whole point of Dostoevsky is that they don't tell you to do or not do something, usually. You're supposed to derive it. If you have to ask, then you're missing the major point of it.
I mean, even when Dostoevsky kind of drops that and he goes to like, was the end of Crime and Punishment finally has like, all right, here's my moral. That's where you lose a lot of Dostoevsky scholars. That's where Bakhtin says that's where you lose the dual logic of Dostoevsky, and the ending isn't worth much to him. Not that I guess Mikhail Bakhtin is like the guiding ray of light for probably many people here, but
he is for you, we know.
He is for all of us in our hearts, I think, even whether we know it or not.
Right.
I sent you a couple more in Discord. I don't know if you want to take a look at those. I think this is kind of related.
I really didn't.
Okay.
I don't know how you ended up on Stoics too.
I was just looking
at
up Dostoevsky.
I think the Instagram Stoics need to be stopped. Sorry, I'm only aesthetically stoic.
I sent Matt a Stoic. This is called a Stoics feed, which has a quote picture. Do not be sorry, be better, from the video game character Kratos. Which, first of all, now for the new Kratos that fits the story. I was like, I don't know, of all the video game characters, I don't know if you want to be quoting Kratos. First of all, for how you should be living your life, the man who sold his soul and got his whole family murdered for the sake of murdering half of Greece, but
he didn't apologize. He got better.
That's true. Well, he killed all of Greece, and then he felt bad for it, and then he went north and had another kid.
Listen, if you have so much to say, why don't you fight Kratos?
I'm showing my age. I played the God of War games, but not the reboot. So I don't have anything to say thematically, but probably the best written game in the series.
I played neither, so I'm just here to arrange a fight to try to probably drum up some interest.
Well, speaking of a fight for interest, why don't you just read those last two images I sent you in Discord?
Dostoevsky, but for atheists/agnostics? Doesn't matter if it isn't Russian. I like that this one isn't upvoted either.
No, these are all from Controversial. You got to remember. So people had a lot to say about it, but they don't have a lot to upvote about it.
The other one is the same. Can I read Dostoevsky and be an atheist?
I gotta say, if whether or not you believe in a higher power or not depends on the most recent book you've read, I don't think you're that committed to the cause. It's okay. It's okay to just find God at that point. It's like whatever way you go. I don't know. Not that you need to dig in your heels on whatever belief you have on that issue, but if whether or not you've read Crime and Punishment depends on whether you're a theist or not. I don't know if you're that committed to whichever side you've decided.
I also like that. I'd like to think that this is literally like the. He means it really literally. Like if you're an atheist, you can't even pick the book. It's going to scald you.
Right.
That's what I'd like to imagine.
But also, like, this is something I saw very commonly with both Dostoevsky, with Tolstoy, with other authors of like, if these authors who famously base their ideas on, I'm going to very loosely say Christian morality, and I'll say why I very loosely mean that later. And you're like, all right, do I have to be Christian to understand this? No, you don't. You don't have to be Christian. I don't even think it helps to be Christian, because if there is no one idea of Christianity, and especially like the closest you could get is if you were like Russian Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox with their moralities, but both of them diverge significantly from that with their own novel ideas about religion. And if you're not Eastern Orthodox, then you're not coming in from a version of Christianity that recognizes a lot of things that are important in what they were raised in. So the particulars of every individual subset of Christianity, I think, already doesn't make the idea of Christian morality of like a functional idea, because it really matters in what church you're talking to. Christian morality for the Eastern Orthodox Church and your local Presbyterian church are not the same ones. Let me tell you that right now.
I got something to post in here. I'm gonna post and see if we get our post deleted again, like we did last time we were starting in the subreddit. But I want to see, what would Dostoevsky think of like an evangelical church? That's what I'd like to see.
I think we came to the conclusion a long time ago that if Dostoevsky was alive today, he would be an LDPR member. And I stick by that.
Mm-hmm, probably. But this is a common theme that I see on the subreddit a lot. And if this is where your thinking ends, I think maybe we should think a little further.
I think this is something I've said before in this podcast about Lenin, is that there are many of these thinkers whose greatest point is that they synthesized their age and they had original novel things to say about it. That's also true for Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, up to and including religion in their lives. They had novel and original things to say about these things. And so, like, War and Peace has been around so long that we think of it as the great classic, forgetting that War and Peace in its own time was looked at as kind of a strange novel before it became to define the novel in Eastern Europe following it. The same is true for the religious themes in these novels, because we're so far forward, we look at them as a standard practice, but that's absolutely not true in their own time. These are two authors pushing forward moral reasoning for their own times and their own religions, and to look back at them and be like, you have to be religious, or you have to have a certain viewpoint in order to understand it, is just, I think it's a nonsensical idea, because even if you are religious, you probably are not holding the religiosity that makes sense for these ideas specifically, because these are offshoots of the Eastern Orthodox Church in their own times.
Yeah, I don't know, just the broader question of what even is religion and how you kind of define it is completely different now than what they likely would have thought as well. So it's a broad question. Long story short, you can read Dostoevsky even if you're an atheist. Even if you're an agnostic, you can read him too.
Yeah, even if you are like even if one Dostoevsky novel is all that's between you and theism, you can read it.
Yeah, I'm not touching this last one.
You're just mad at another one. He doesn't want to talk about it. All right.
White knights equal friend zoned. Poor fella.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you're getting from Dostoevsky novel. I don't know. Oh, here's a good one. I love this one.
How do we know the Soviets haven't altered Dostoevsky? Many of the translations we have from the works are post-USSR and likely based on copies published in the USSR. How do we know that the Soviets, with their ideological censorship, didn't alter Dostoevsky's works in any way? How do we know we aren't missing any pages in our current translations? How do we know we have everything he wrote? Do I sound like a cuckoo conspiracy theorist? Yes.
Do you want to read the edit?
Sorry, was off by meds when I made this post, lol.
I don't know if there's too much to say about this one beyond, as people pointed out in the comments, many of our translations come before the Soviet Union.
Yeah, also we have original copies.
Right.
So, that'll do.
That will solve that one, huh?
Yeah, that sure will.
Problem solved. There we go. Here's another one. This one comes from r/Dostoevsky Circle Jerk, so this isn't entirely fair. This is meant as a joke, but I think it's
Sonia
still...
versus Dunya dating pro con list.
Why don't you do the rundown for Sonia and Dunya?
No. Is this real? Like, somebody really made this?
This is clearly a joke, but even as a joke, this feels like in bad taste.
So Dunya is hot. Sonia is hot, ? She's probably funny. Sonia's freaky. Dunya's intelligent. Sonia is serious, faithful, and super loyal. Dunya's independent. She's also has a crazy family, and then what is Sonia? Crazy ex?
Yeah.
There's really no difference with how they're described here.
Yeah, so that's the rundown. I know that was meant as a joke, but even as a joke, it feels a little bit. I don't know how I feel about that one.
This could have been in the main subreddit. I don't believe this was actually a joke.
They tried it out, and the main one didn't succeed. They put it in Dostoevsky's circle jerk, where it was better received.
That's where the real Dostoevsky fans hang out.
Yeah. All right, maybe we should give Dostoevsky a break. Maybe we should talk about Tolstoy for a second, and this piece, which I just sent you, which we saw earlier, but still getting my goat even now.
How much land does a man need? Is Tolstoy against peasants? So basically, guys, I've been reading Tolstoy for the past few months and started reading short stories, and I started loving him so much. He gives me peace, and today I read HMLDAMN. I loved it as usual, and I saw ourselves as the protagonist running in the fields the same way, we running behind money. And as usual, I saw this Reddit thread where guys said Tolstoy wants the peasants to be the same way, and be content instead of aiming for opportunity? It bothered me. Is this what Tolstoy did? I view him as a very good person and a wise guy. Please, guys, let me know anything I need to be aware of. I, first of all, love this acronym. Damn.
This is such. I love this idea of reading Tolstoy and being like, when I read How Much Land Does a Peasant Need, I really got the sense that this guy
does a man need, not a peasant, Cameron.
Does a man need, excuse me, yes.
How could you differentiate like that?
With our friend here, I don't know how anyone could read the story and be like, hey, he seems like the good guy. This man who endlessly wants more and more wealth and is never happy with what he has, which is already immense wealth at any point in the story.
I don't really understand the question. There's multiple questions in here.
I think there's so many questions. I think it's yeah.
How do you answer the question? How much land does a man need, Cameron?
How much land does a man need? Well, about 6 feet. About 6 feet of dirt.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're reading that, you don't get it. I don't know what to tell you, man. I think your worldview might be a little too alien for anything that Dostoevsky is writing here. He's writing tales for peasants to be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't run after wealth endlessly. And if that's not connecting with you, I think your basic values might be a little bit too divergent.
Divergent, you say?
You're stored into one of the other three houses. Factions. I don't know. What do you have in diversion? What are they?
I don't know.
Mind types?
I don't know.
INFPs, INTJs. Are those the four?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I kind of like that, as I went back on the subreddit, I like that like AI is starting to infiltrate all of these. People will be like, oh, look what I drew. And it's like, no, this is an AI-generated thing.
Yeah. Oh, God. Here's another one. Here's another good one for you. This one's from r/Tolstoy because I think we've given Dostoevsky fans enough grief. But this is actually a good question.
If someone were to make a manga based on War and Peace, how many chapter would it have?
I didn't include this in the screenshot, but there's only one response to that, and the response is more than One Piece.
I like to think that if Tolstoy had the ability to kind of keep something going serially forever, that he would have.
Oh yeah, easily. I think Tolstoy could write something longer than One Piece. I don't think that War and Peace would be longer than One Piece. One Piece is not a manga. One Piece is a way of life. That's the only thing you've got left to do with your life once you start that.
Yeah, I'll pretend like I can relate to that sentiment.
And all you need to know about it is that I think it got started 20 years ago and it's not done yet, and it's been releasing at a pretty constant pace since then. So if you can imagine that, let's see. No, 1997. Holy shit. It's been running for 27 years nonstop as a comic.
Well, maybe that is the equivalent. I was just thinking that I don't even know what it would look like. You know, I think any adaptation of War and Peace has to include like an obligatory 30-minute voiceover with just like black screen Tolstoy quotes.
Yeah, that would be tough. You could make a manga, but it would only be the actual story itself. And unfortunately for all of us, if you only did the actual story, you'd be missing out on most of what Tolstoy has to say in War and Peace.
And that goes exactly back to the very first question of, does it get more interesting?
No.
No, actually, like plot-wise, it doesn't.
You have to be kind of a masochist to really to enter this discipline.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's plenty of books that are not. Yeah, the plot themselves, that's not really why you read.
Right.
Just for the sick pleasure of being able to say that you've read it.
I've sent you another one. This one, the post itself is fine. The immediate response to the first comment on there is the most psychotic response I've ever read to something that anyone said.
Oh boy, yeah. All right. Tolstoy's best character? Who do you think is Tolstoy's most complex and interesting character? I suspect Anna or Levin are the most common answers, but I personally think it might be Pierre from War and Peace. I found his constant reinvention as he pursued the meaning of life captivating. What do you think? You know, this is actually a fair and good question.
This is that normal post.
Normal post, generates discussion, gives your own thoughts. Great. And what's the top comment, Cameron?
Well, the top comment, also normal. Pierre spoke to me the most. The constant search for meaning and the obsession with women and alcohol are two things I could relate to as a youth. Normal response.
Yeah.
And then in response to that, Matt, I don't know if you want to pick up this thread.
Did you have a bit of a tummy and glasses to boot? Winky face?
I don't know what's the winky face emoji that.
For me, it's the fact that there's a Nesquik ad in the middle of this.
Well, yeah, Reddit's cooked. We knew that.
Yeah.
But just what an unhinged response.
Yeah, this subreddit occasionally, it does go off the rails. Not as frequently as Dostoevsky, which that one is never on the rails.
Right.
That one has never quite found the rails.
That one's doing its own thing with the rails. It's got a unique relationship to it.
To rails, yeah. This one, well, do you relate to Pierre?
I can't say. I don't think Pierre is my character. Okay. This is actually a good question. From War and Peace, let's keep it simple. Let's keep it going forward. What's your number one related character? Who do you
I didn't want to do
with?
War and Peace. I wanted to say Levin.
All right, you want to say?
Yeah. But only the farming scenes.
None of the other parts was Levin. Just to be clear, Matt says he doesn't want to be associated with the part where he tries to marry a 17-year-old at the age of like 35.
No, I just want to do farming. That's it. I want to go through my city slicker arc of getting back to my agricultural roots. That's it. Gonna lay in the. I seriously do, because I keep getting pushed. I don't even know what subreddit is, but it's like these people with lots of land, and they're like, I mowed it with a scythe today, and I'm like, first of all, I didn't even know people still use scythes, but yeah, that looks kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So all I can say is that there is a masculine primal urge to mow a large plot of land with a scythe that only Tolstoy captured. You know, actually, it's not a masculine urge, because half the posts that I see are women doing it, which is somehow that's even funnier.
It's Tolstoy accurately captured the urge of all humanity to revert to farming.
Yes.
As our technology has gotten more advanced, fewer and fewer people farm, except the underclasses primarily. And so now it's time for all the wealthy classes who feel dissatisfied with their modern life to yearn for an age in which farming was an upright thing that you did with your family instead of something that businessmen forced undocumented people to do.
That's right. I need to see how my wheat KPIs are doing. So what about you? Who's your character?
This is with a big asterisk with
no asterisk.
Nikolai Rostov as like big asterisk, not going after my cousin, first of all. That's cousinhood is not a dangerous neighborhood for me.
Michael Cera's quaking.
Just to be clear, it's just like, the guy who's just like, what's my point in life? I don't know. Similar to Pierre trying to do that, but just like wandering from career to career, different idea, army, gambling, all these things. Like, all right, what am I going to do with my life? I don't really know.
And you're also a huge monarchist.
I have been trying to get the King of Spain back into actual power. I keep sending him guns. He gives them back. I just have been saying you ceded it to the Phalangists and during like the whole of the 20th century. Come on, just take it back. We could take England together with your armies, but he's not responding to my letters.
I think Nikolai is also a good storyteller. I think if you were briefly involved in a military battle, it would be a core memory that we would hear about. And I don't think it would reflect the battle.
No, it would be, I think...
Not at all.
Maybe this is why one of my favorite authors outside of Slavic Lit is Tim O'Brien, because Tim O'Brien did, I think, one tour as in Vietnam, and he the rest of his entire career as a writer has been about Vietnam. That would be me. I would...
Yeah. Without even having been to Vietnam.
Yeah. That is the broad swath of the posts that I've collected for today, I think.
Great hunting, great gathering.
Great, thank you. Great posts, everyone.
Great posts, everyone. We'll get back to you next time.
We'll respond to all of these with our exact transcript of this episode in each of these posts.
Yeah, and a link to the episode. They'll love that.
Yeah, I think so. Let's move on to our secondary topic for today. Novels, Slavic literature we'd love to cover, but for one reason or another, we'll probably not bring onto this podcast. I've got a couple books, actually. I don't know, is there anything you wanted to talk about, or any novels that have had your attention for years, but have never made it on here?
Not novels, but maybe we should mention the whole form of poetry that we don't cover.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Which is hugely important to the Slavic canon. Massively. Can't underestimate how important it is. And we don't talk about it because it's really hard to talk about poetry and translation.
Yeah.
That's the real that's pretty much the reason.
If you'd like to hear more about that, we can find more people, actually more translators, more like you can always recommend more people like Philip Metres, or you can say, let's bring Philip back on the podcast. It could be cool, but or if you're looking to start a podcast of your own, there you go. That's your niche, covering poetry and translation. Yeah,
it's a great shame of mine that we're not able to cover more.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice maybe one day to cover like Marina Tsvetaeva,
notoriously an easy poet.
Yeah, but not our usual. And that's one of the things where I think we could expand beyond what we do, but that also as like I don't think either of us wants to expand recklessly beyond our actual field of where we know things. There's lots of podcasts out in the world where they just cover topics, and that's fine, but we're trying to keep it within the realm of what we actually know. And we'd like to expand that. That's one of our goals long term, but I feel like that's something that should be done carefully.
Yeah. But what novels do you have that we haven't done?
I have a couple.
Resigned to never bringing on.
Well, they're more modern.
Because you
stuff.
think I can't handle it.
No, I just don't feel like it'd fit with their format. For like the number one thing I could think of is I've been obsessed with the novel Laurus by Eugene Vodolazkin. I don't know how to describe the novel other than it's a guy wandering from town to town for like that's the novel. A guy trying to atone for his sins. The novel split into four discrete parts of eras of his life, and he just wanders around and spending his life variously as a doctor, a holy fool, all these other things. It's so prototypically Slavic. It reminds me a lot of like William Bollman in that this is an interesting thing to read about. I think it was translated by, I can't remember who the translator is. I'll put it into the description, but she has got a great book list, and I'll put her website in there. You can subscribe to her, like what she's recommending, because she translates modern Slavic literature and reading.
Oh, was it Lisa Hayden?
Lisa Hayden, that's it. Thank you. Who did the first? They did Zuleika. I don't know if she did the second one. I don't think she did Volga Tale. But
I thought this book was longer than it was.
No, it's only like 400 something pages. It's pretty short.
It's under 400. That's cowardly.
But so the original Russian is written in like a faux old Russian. That's why it reminds me of William Bollman and his like faux old English. And hearing Lisa Hayden talk about the process of translating faux antique Russian language
must have been real easy.
Yeah, it was
super fun.
She said it was like required a lot of her trying to like make up faux old English. and trying to match that with Vodalaskin's writing, which is tough, but it makes for a good read. It's thoroughly enjoyable. It's just not something I think we can cover in this podcast. There are points and morals in the novel, but like not enough that we can cover it in the way that we do.
I find it hard to cover a full novel just because it's a lot of reading for our schedule.
Yes, that too.
Like some podcasts where they can cover one novel a week, I'm really envious of. They often don't come from traditions where a novel is like 800 plus pages, though.
Right, yeah. And I think for a lot of that stuff, if we were to switch to that format, it's a lot of those novels are, in order to get the point, you just have to read the whole novel, and then you can kind of make the point or the couple of underlying themes there. We're coming from works that are really, really dense, which is why I don't think it fits for our format.
It could. I don't know. Maybe we could try it.
We've done stuff like that. We've covered modern novels, stuff like that, or like a lot of Plavin stuff I think would be fun to talk about, but it's another one of those things where it really, the amount of reading you have to do to get to the point is a lot, and so it just doesn't fit in with our schedule so much. Maybe in longer term, we could start doing something like that. And I think it is important to talk about Prelepin in terms of like the broad canon of things we try to get our audience to understand. You really should read Prelepin at some point. At least should read Generation P, but any of his other novels, I think too. Although that's kind of controversial. I remember I was talking to a pretty literary guy when we were in Russia, who ended up being a friend of ours, master program in Austria, which is a funny coincidence. But he hated Pelevin. He thought he was a total sellout, everything after Generation P. So take from that what you will, that there are people in the East. He was Kazakh, not Russian, but he had some strong opinions about Pelevin's work post Generation P. But I don't know. I think Generation P would be a great one to cover. Just it's hard to talk about in our format.
Yeah, and it's possible that we can figure out a way to do it, but I don't know. I would agree. I think a lot of modern writing is it is a little bit tougher to talk about for us, because it's a less like here's what you should take from it, here's the gist, and more like here's what we liked,
or here's like the modern political trends this is responding to. Have we ever covered Sorokin? I don't think we have, but we've planned to. We wanted to cover his Ice trilogy at one point.
Yeah.
And Sorokin's one of those ones where it's like, all right, here's the specific political trends he's writing in response to. If we cover Day of the Oprichnik, right, we used to be pointing like, well, all right, let's talk about toxic masculinity, I guess, which would be great. Just again, not in our usual format with how many words are in each of those novels.
Yeah, that's true. It does. I don't know. I would like to cover more modern stuff, though. I feel like personally, I'm winding down what I wanted to cover when we set out to do the podcast, and I'm quite frankly, we're almost coming up on 4 years, and I'm like getting to be out of ideas.
There's still plenty of stuff, but
yeah, it's a question of like what will be interesting in our format to cover. What can we do to maybe even alter the format to try to make it more interesting to cover? That's what we tried with Life and Fate, and that was a disaster. No, it's not. It's not a disaster. It actually was great. Has been great, but disastrously busy.
Yeah. When we can do this without severely impacting our lives in the same way this series has.
Yeah, I think I'll be back getting my creative juices flowing when we are done with that series.
Right. And then I think people go back to demanding that we cover Dostoevsky again.
Yeah, which maybe. We'll see.
We'll see
if we choose to appease them.
We'll see what happens. Who knows what the future holds for us.
If you have things that you want to hear us cover, write us an email and let us know, because I will do that. I will listen to you. I'll consider it.
We will certainly read it.
You may approach the court. Yeah. SlavicLitPod@gmail.com. Let us know what you're interested in here. We'll probably put out a more formal reader survey or listener survey after we finish Life and Fate, because I do want to try to capture some ideas. And I do have some things that our paid supporters have suggested. They have not gone into the ether. They're still in our plans. We just plan slowly.
When we're covering like 2 to 3 books a year at this point with our long series, it doesn't move very fast, that needle.
Yeah.
But there is I think what we set out to say, like Matt said, as maybe we're coming to the end of that, but that does not mean that there is a shortage of topics for us to cover.
Yeah.
It's just moving out of maybe our primary field of specialty, which is maybe a good thing because that allows us to work and build specialties in other areas too.
Yeah, I hope it will still be. I think I'll still have ideas. There are still, it's not the end of me. I still have things that I want to talk about and read on the podcast, but I feel like a lot of the ones that I like really wanted to discuss, where I had felt like, there was really nothing out there discussing these things. I feel like we've at least put something out there for people.
Right, yeah.
Whether that's actually used or not, I don't know. But it's there now. That's good.
We have it, so it could be used if you wanted it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to all be books, as we maybe this is a good time to start transitioning to the end of the episode. But there's also always movies. And speaking of, maybe, since maybe this is a good time to bring up what we'll be covering in our next episode.
Yeah, I forgot that we agreed to do that. That's crazy.
So that's how on top of it we are.
It's good though. I was literally just writing about this yesterday. So I will have a lot to share with everybody on it.
It's going to be real fresh.
Next episode, we are going to be discussing early mid 1920s film Aelita by Yakov Partizanov, which is an early sci-fi film. It's supremely weird. You can find it on YouTube. It's not that long. It's really, really good. Everybody both loved and hated it. So we will. Everybody loved it except the Soviet press, and we'll talk about it, why that was, next week.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't know how much of it has to do with your dissertation, but Aelita was a significant part of your master's thesis. And so
it has everything to do with it.
Yeah, so Matt has so much to say about this. I thoroughly enjoyed.
We'll talk about Aelita, the Soviet press, Antonio Gramsci, everything. It's coming full circle, and then I'm going to retire.
Should we release your master's thesis ahead of time as an advanced reading for all the people?
As required reading. Don't think I won't.
All right. Well, you and I will have to. I think I remember reading it before you sent it in. I need to read it again. It's been quite some time, but I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you think that. I always think that.
Well, yeah. Though we always for everything we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that case, maybe this is a good time to, first of all, thank everyone, all of our supporters. We appreciate you sticking by us in this series of really doing something that no one asked for. And it's unclear how many people want, but it has been a great, everyone had been begging, knocking down our door. It's been a difficult series, as I think we've made pretty clear, but it's also been an immensely rewarding series, and we could not do without the support of all of you. The music used in this episode today was Starое Kino by Peremotka. You can find more of their stuff on Bandcamp and Spotify. The links and spelling are in the show notes.
You'll hear from us again soon.
Hey, 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 hey.